Hirken crouched behind a jagged chunk of volcanic rock, the air thick with the acrid stench of sulfur and ozone. Above him, the sky itself bled a sickly green, warped by the unnatural presence of the Chaos Titan lumbering towards their position. He squeezed the Voxcaster in his hand, his voice tight with urgency. "This is Brother Hirken, 3rd Company. We've got a thrown-damn Titan on our hands." Static crackled back, then Brother Diaz, their stoic squad leader, replied, "Acknowledged, Hirken. Hold your position. Extraction ETA 10 minutes. Hirken let out a humorless bark of a laugh. 10 minutes? Against this monstrosity? It felt like a death sentence. The demon engine, a defiler of nightmarish proportions, was a cacophony of twisted metal and pulsating demon flesh. Its smokestacks spewed oily black clouds, and a cannon larger than a Land Raider loomed on its central carapace. 10 minutes is optimistic, muttered Brother Silas, a grizzled veteran with a cybernetic eye that flickered erratically. He hefted his heavy bolter, the weapon spitting flame as he sighted in. "We'll be lucky to last 5. Brother Anthor, the company chaplain, his crimson power armor stark against the desolate landscape, met Silas's gaze with unwavering faith. "We hold the line, brother. The Emperor protects." His words held the weight of scripture, a beacon of hope amidst the encroaching darkness. Hirken gritted his teeth. Anthor's faith was admirable, but right now he craved the firepower of a macrocannon, not prayers. Faith drives the warrior, but we need firepower, he thought. He checked his own bolter rifle, the familiar way to comfort in the chaos. He'd been with his squad for years, forged in the crucible of the Nachmund Gauntlet. They were his brothers, his brotherhood, and he wouldn't let them die without a fight. The ground trembled as the defiler took a ponderous step. Buildings, once proud monuments of Dharrovar's fallen kingdom, crumbled into dust. From the defiler's open maw, a torrent of demonic energy erupted, striking the unfortunate squad stationed on the ridge above. Their screams were abruptly cut short. Hirken felt a cold dread grip his heart. "We need to draw, it's fire!" Silas yelled over the din of the collapsing city. "Give Deus a chance to get that extraction, Valkyr Hiza." Anthor raised his hand, his voice firm. "Brother Silas is right. We create a diversion. Buy some time." Hirken knew what she was suggesting. It was a suicide mission, but there was no other option. He glanced at his squad. Silas met his gaze, a grim understanding passing between them. Anthor closed his eyes, a silent prayer on his lips. "All right," Hirken said, his voice surprisingly steady for someone about to charge a rampaging demon engine. "Hirken, Silas, we flank it left. Anthor, you stay with Deus, provide cover fire." Anthor nodded sharply. "May the Emperor guide you." Hirken felt a surge of combat stims course through him. The stimulants ran through his body, the bitter taste in the mouth momentarily banished by the promise of heightened reflexes and focus. Silas thumped him on the back, a silent encouragement. They sprinted out from behind the rock, drawing the attention of the monstrous machine. A storm of cursed bolter rounds erupted from the defiler, the air crackling with unholy energy. Silas roared in defiance, his heavy bolter coughing out a stream of explosive shells. One round clipped the defiler's leg, sending a shower of sparks flying. It was a minuscule scratch on a behemoth, but for a fleeting moment, a flicker of vulnerability showed in the demon engine's movements. "Go, get cover!" Silas yelled, shoving Hirken towards a cluster of ruined buildings. Hirken stumbled, landing hard on the cracked pavement. He looked back to see Silas take a direct hit from the defiler's main cannon. The impact detonated in a blinding flash, leaving behind a smoldering crater and a chilling silence. Hirken screamed, a primal cry of rage and grief. Silas, his friend, his brother, gone in an instant. The world narrowed down to a single point: vengeance. He scrambled to his feet, ignoring the blossoming pain in his arm, and charged towards the defiler, his bolt rifle spitting defiance. He was a single spark against a raging inferno, but in that moment, Hirken felt an ironclad resolve. He wouldn't let Silas's sacrifice be in vain. He would make the defiler pay. Hyrcan weaved through the ruined cityscape, dodging debris and the demon engine's incessant gunfire. The air thrummed with a malevolent energy, a constant pressure on his mind that threatened to unravel his sanity. He ignored it, channeling his fury into raw focus. He reached the base of a half-collapsed spire, the twisted steel offering a sliver of precarious cover. Hyrcan sank behind a fallen pillar, gasping for breath. His arm throbbed with a dull ache, courtesy of a stray demonic bolt. He gritted his teeth, ignoring the sting as he checked his ammunition. Low, damn it, low. A booming voice, distorted and inhuman, echoed across the battlefield. The Defiler was speaking, its words laced with a power that sent shivers down Hyrcan's spine. You pathetic mortals defy the will of the gods. Your resistance means nothing. Hyrcan snarled back, his voice raw with emotion. We fight for the Emperor, you fraked piece of trash. His defiance was met with a deafening roar. The Defiler unleashed a torrent of demonic flame, engulfing the building in an inferno. Hyrcan squeezed his eyes shut, bracing for the heat, but it never came. He opened his eyes to see a shimmering barrier crackling above him, deflecting the flames. Anthor, get to high ground, brother Hyrcan. His voice, amplified by his power armor speakers, cut through the din. I'll hold the line for a while longer. Hyrcan hesitated. Leaving Anthor alone felt like a betrayal, but he knew he was right. He needed to find a way to disable the Defiler, or they were all dead. With a final glance at the resolute chaplain, he sprinted towards the skeletal remains of a communications tower, hoping to find some vantage point. The climb was a treacherous one. The metal beams groaned under his weight, threatening to give way at any moment. But Hyrcan pushed on, fueled by a desperate hope and the memory of Silas. He finally reached the top. The ravaged city sprawled out beneath him like a shattered mosaic. And this, in the heart of the devastation, stood the Defiler, its demonic form radiating an unholy aura. Hyrcan Visor scanned the machine, searching for a weak point. Its main cannon seemed too heavily armored, the carapace too thick. Then he spotted it, a series of exposed cooling vents on the Defiler's back. A desperate plan formed in his mind. He holstered his bolt rifle, the weapon useless at this distance. Instead, he reached into his backpack, his fingers brushing against a forgotten relic from his training days, a pair of frag grenades. A risky gambit, but it was his only shot. With a deep breath, Hyrcan activated the grenades and hurled them with all his might. They arced through the air, a silent prayer on his lips. The grenades detonated in a shower of shrapnel, impacting the cooling vents. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a plume of acrid smoke erupted from the vents, followed by a series of mechanical shrieks. The Defiler faltered, its movements becoming sluggish. A cheer, tinged with hysteria, escaped Hyrcan's lips. He'd done it. He'd hurt the beast. But his victory was short-lived. The Defiler roared in fury, its demonic form twisting in rage. With a sickening crunch, it ripped one of its own arms free, the limb dangling uselessly at its side. The exposed flesh pulsed with a malevolent light, regenerating at an alarming rate. A voice crackled over his voxcaster, Deus's voice laced with urgency. Hyrcan, what did you do? The Defiler is enraged! Hyrcan didn't have time to explain. Extraction! Now! The words tumbled out, desperate and raw. He knew they were running out of time as a faint hum filled the air, growing louder by the second. Hyrcan squinted through the smoke, searching the sky. Feast! A silhouette emerged from the horizon. A Valkyrie gunship, its engines roaring, but it was still too far, too vulnerable. The Defiler, seemingly invigorated by its rage, turned its main cannon towards the Valkyrie. Hyrcan felt a surge of dread. No, they couldn't. Suddenly the air shimmered, and a blinding flash erupted from the Valkyrie. A lance beam, a desperate gamble from the pilot, impacted the Defiler's main cannon with a deafening boom. The cannon exploded outwards, showering the surrounding area with molten metal and debris. The Defiler roared in pain, its movements erratic. It lumbered towards the Valkyrie, its remaining arm raised in a grotesque parody of a fist. The Valkyrie weaved erratically, dodging the lumbering swings of the Defiler's arm. Hyrcan watched, heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs as the gunship unleashed a torrent of laser fire. The Defiler shrugged off the attack, its demonic resilience seemingly unending. But the Valkyrie held its ground, its pilot a skilled veteran defying the odds. Below, amidst the ruined cityscape, Anfor sprinted towards Hyrcan's position. His crimson armor was scorched and dented, a testament to his fierce defense. "We need to get out of his," she yelled, his voice strained. Hyrcan nodded, his gaze fixed on the desperate dance in the sky. "The Valkyrie's drawing its fire. We need to reach the extraction point." Together, they clambered down the precarious remains of the communications tower, the ground trembling with every step from the Defiler's enraged stomps. They reached the base just as the Valkyrie let out a final defiant roar. It had done its job, drawing the Defiler's attention long enough for Hyrcan and Anfor to escape. But the victory was bittersweet. The Valkyrie, its engine sputtering, slammed into the side of a ruined skyscraper, exploding in a ball of fire. Tears welled up in Hyrcan's eyes, a silent tribute to the pilot who had sacrificed himself for their escape. Anfor gripped his shoulder, his touch grounding him. "We grieve later, brother. Now we fight for survival." She was right. The Defiler, free from the Valkyrie's distraction, was turning its attention back to them. It loomed over them, a monstrous shadow blotting out the sun. Hyrcan raised his bolter rifle, the last remaining clip of ammunition a meager comfort. But before he could fire, a thunderous roar echoed across the battlefield. A colossal figure emerged from the smoke and dust, a knight paladin, its adamantium armor gleaming under the sickly green sky. It had been hidden within the city ruins, waiting for the opportune moment to strike. The knight charged towards the Defiler, its movement surprisingly agile for its massive size. It slammed its titanic fist into the Defiler's chest, the impact sending tremors through the ground. The Defiler stumbled back, momentarily stunned. This was their chance. Anfor activated a flare, the crimson light piercing the smoke-filled sky. It was their prearranged signal for extraction. Within seconds, a sleek transport pod descended from the sky, hovering precariously above the battlefield. Hyrcan and Anfor sprinted towards it, dodging debris and the Defiler's desperate swipes. They reached the pod just as the Knight Paladin delivered another devastating blow to the Defiler. The demon engine roared in fury, but its movements were sluggish, its power waning. The Knight had bought them precious time. Hyrcan clambered into the pod, Anfor close behind. The hatch hissed shut, sealing them inside the cramped metal capsule. A moment later, the pod lurched upwards, propelled by powerful thrusters. Hyrcan looked back through the viewport. The Knight and the Defiler were locked in a brutal dance of destruction, the cityscape crumbling around them. He couldn't see the outcome, but he knew the Knight would fight on, a lone bastion of hope against the tide of chaos. As the pod ascended into the polluted atmosphere, Hyrcan slumped against the wall, exhaustion overwhelming him. He closed his eyes, the image of Silas flashing before him. A choked sob escaped his lips. He had survived, but at a terrible cost. Anfor reached out, his hand warm on his shoulder. "We fight on, brother," she said, his voice soft but resolute. "We fight for Silas, for the Emperor, and for each of this." Hyrcan nodded, tears blurring his vision. He may have lost his brother, but he still had his squad, his family, and as long as they had each other, they would keep fighting. They would keep the Emperor's light burning bright, even in the darkest corners of the galaxy. The fight was far from over, but for now, they had survived. And that, in the grim reality of the 41st millennium, was a victory in itself.